really excited about this episode. One thing that I keep experiencing in life is just how unorganized people are with their everyday life and just basic regular things. And it's just so apparent to me. It screams at me. And I'm realizing more and more it's because I'm an organizer. And even though sometimes I have imposter syndrome and I'm just like, I'm not an organizer. I think in my brain, I'm like, you are not organizing members or a body of people, so you're not an organizer. But in reality, I am an organizer because of the work I do. It's work that I have done for organizations before. Yeah, and one example of that was at the Noir's basketball practice situation. Mm-hmm. Just watching
Noir, our child.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Just watching the group of men that were trying to organize, like, how many kids would you say?
I was less than 50.
It was less than 50, you'd say.
Maybe it was about like around 50, 60.
60, 70.
Yeah, and there were like 6 men, we'll assume dads of the children.
We could assume dads.
That were the coaches, but also seemingly
volunteer vibes.
Yes.
Probably like 1 or 2 of them are actually getting paid, maybe. I don't know.
I doubt that.
Okay, 100% volunteer. We'll just assume that. Point is, I was just sitting there watching, and I'm just like, this seems so unorganized.
Shenanigans.
Like, kids are just sitting there waiting.
The kids did a good job, though.
The kids
I was
did
impressed.
their best to, like, okay, you just want me to sit in this one spot and not move until
for
you
like
say my name.
45 minutes.
For like a solid 45 minutes. Okay, I'm going to try my best. But that's just one example of many that pop up in my
in your life, yeah.
In my life. And it really made me think about, like, just organizing and, like, being an organizer, and kind of feeling like there's, like, a discrepancy around how everyday people understand that role and, like, whether or not they see it as a role. You know, I think like an organizer is also in alignment with somebody like a wedding planner.
Yeah, that's what you're saying is, I think, is making me think of, like, you're talking about 2 different kinds of organizing.
Totally.
Or like 2 different, like, organizing, 2 different meanings of that word of organizer or organizing, right? Because there's one meaning that's like taking things and putting them in an order that is, or a system or a process that is, like, helpful for the goal, right?
Facts.
That's like the wedding planner, the situation with the coaches, many things that we experience in our lives. I feel like it's like a way that a way that you can see the world. You're like, oh, this big mumble jumble mess, column A, column B, row 2, right? And then there's the other type of, like, organizer role of, like, that you were talking about in terms of your experience in work, of, like, organizing people toward, like, to take collective action.
Yes. Towards
a particular goal, like, ideally, like, social change, changing our conditions as a people. Yeah, I think, but the, like, experience and skills overlap. And I would also say that there are a lot of people in the world that do the, like, organizing a structure system into a thing that would actually be very good social justice organizers, because a lot of those skills and, like, perspectives are transferable.
And I would also make the distinction between the dads that were volunteering.
Yeah. Who are not necessarily organized or
horrible.
organized thinkers.
I mean, I was just like...
I was sitting there
literally-
and I was like, I could think of it. I could see at least 3 other ways to do this thing that you're doing
Yo.
right now. Wild.
Hundreds of ways that this could have been done in a better way. And I was just like, I need to take a step back. And
But yeah, I mean, like, shout out to them because it's
absolutely
totally not an easy thing to do.
And
but
I'm not
also,
doing it, you know?
I was not. No, we were not doing it.
For sure. Like, I'm not doing it. So, like, that's part of the reason why
we were getting hazed by a 2-year-old.
That's part of the reason why I could be in those settings and just be quiet and not, like, you know, like, what's going on here? Like, what are y'all doing out there? You
Well,
know?
I definitely was like,
I'm like,
I walked up, I was like, oh, they need a lady. There's no way that there's no.
Well, that's
here.
just definitely a fact. You know, like that's a fact. They need the presence of women out there, which I'm sure it's not hard to find women who play basketball or who are interested in basketball out here. But like,
we just have a lot going on.
We totally have a lot going on, which is why I'm just like, look, I'm gonna take
Shout
a step
out to
back.
the people who do it, even if they're not great organizers.
Facts.
Yeah.
Very different from someone like a wedding planner, who I
Yes.
feel like 9 times out of 10, you probably have, like, if you're committing to being a wedding planner, you probably have some level of skill in regards to organizing.
100%.
If not, you're fire as fuck at it. Like, you're really, really good at organizing, period, the end.
And those are the skills and the people that we're going to need in this future that we're heading into. Like, take your skills of, like, being able to put on a fire wedding and see all the things that need to get done and get it done in a way that feels lovely and is ritualistic and also on time, et cetera, and help us get out of this fascist hole. Please, friends.
Speaking of organizing to get us out of this fascist hole,
Yeah.
I love a good transition. In preparation for this episode, the universe threw some shit in my timeline, and I went through a
Shout out to her.
I mean, yeah, she just be throwing all types of shit in my timeline. I really do feel like the universe has my back and resources me, especially when I'm like again, I'm thinking about this episode. I'm like, all right, we're gonna talk about organizing, so like this is gonna be lit. And then boom, this thing pops up in my timeline, and I'm like, hilarious.
Ashe.
That the first time I'm actually interested in diving into Marshall Ganz is in preparation for this episode. Because literally, since doing this work, since like 2012, 2013, I've heard folks...
Marshall Ganz.
Marshall Ganz.
Right there.
I mean, like, but like...
No shade, but
no shade.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And you
so
should read the Marshall Ganz.
Two things people always bring up. They bring up Marshall Ganz. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right.
You are.
Marshall Ganz and Robert's Rule of Order. Literally, as somebody who's like outside looking into the movement, and then like I'm like trying to step into the movement, I'm like, why y'all keep talking about this shit? Stop. And if you're gonna talk about it, explain it. Who the fuck is Marshall Ganz, and what's this? Who's Robert, and why he got rules?
I have so much to say about Robert's Rules of Order.
That's another episode, because I'm about to...
I don't think we can go down that rabbit hole, but I just want to say...
Maybe we should make space for it at the end, because...
I was a Jack and Jill kid. Spoiler alert. I grew up in Jack and Jill. Shout out to my mom, Alice Peoples.
Shout out Jack and Jill.
Who is an icon in Jack and Jill of America. And we can talk about Jack and Jill and black people and all that another time. But the thing I wanted to say is that I learned about Robert's Rules of Order in a very in-depth way through Jack and Jill. So, like, me and my sister joke about this all the time, because we're like, if y'all want to go there, we could go there. Like, if you want to take it to the Robert Rules
Apparently,
of Order streets,
it's a fucking Bible.
we will
So I'm just like,
run you down on Robert's rules.
Honestly,
just take over your meeting, change your bylaws, and take over your shit.
we should have like
It's so funny.
We should have like short episodes that are like 10 to 25 minutes long and talk about shit like Robert's Rule.
Okay, please make
like,
your point.
Anyways,
what did the universe tell you about Marshall
I just think
Ganz?
it's because I'm very much this is gonna make sense to me when it needs to make sense to me, and that's how I felt with Marshall Ganz. I'm like, I'm not gonna look into this because nobody's shoving it into my face except just referencing constantly. But then this article pops up, and it's an interview with Marshall Ganz.
Great.
And I'm like,
that's awesome.
What a perfect time
to dive into
Marshall Ganz. And I really did appreciate some of the stuff that I was reading about just his perspective and his history. He, I believe, started organizing in the civil rights era movement around. I feel like he started organizing in Mississippi, and then at some point threw down with the Montgomery bus boycott. Either he threw down, or he like gave some academic perspective that was like important, something of the sort. I don't know. My bad, Marshall Ganz, if I'm messing this shit up. I'm trying my best, honestly. Point is, you did inspire this episode.
Yeah, you're not too off.
I don't think I'm off.
I think it was more that he was at the boycott and then sort of transitioned into being sort of considered a scholar of social change and organizing and such. That's what I think. But again, I also don't know all the words.
We will pop up the Marshall Ganz fact right about now. But he's just seemingly a brilliant man.
Yeah.
From what I have read.
A lot of people credit his strategy to Obama's first win in 2008.
I was reading about that, and one thing I have recognized since entering this movement political space is that niggas love to remind people when they have worked for Obama.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, we get it. A Purple Heart, nigga. Clearly.
I was on the Obama.
I'm just like,
I was on the Obama campaign.
Oh yeah, I was on the back-to-back Obama campaign. I'm not saying it correctly, but whatever. Honestly, respect to y'all's work, because I'm not throwing shade on it. I'm just laughing at the culture.
It happens a lot.
I have found myself in. A
lot of people got into this work because they were inspired by his campaign.
And I appreciate those people because some of those people, I would assume a majority of those people have paved the way for me to enter this space and cook up and do dope ass work.
Yeah, okay.
Or I kicked in the door, waved in the 4-4. Anyways, one thing that he said was democracy is not something you have, it's something you do. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing that I was reading that I thought was interesting was his perspective around, like, basically up until the 60s, organizations were essentially represented by, like, local organizations. So, like, the local organizations, it was like from the ground up. So if you were representing an organization nationally, that power was a direct connection to local power.
Chapters, affiliates, so on and so forth.
Essentially, it reminded me of like a union structure.
Yeah.
Like basically like that. And he was essentially talking about how there was essentially a shift because of technology.
Yeah.
So it shifted the priority, which was local chapters. You all prioritize bringing in members, and we will, power from the bottom up. It shifted to basically, let's prioritize getting dollars and let's prioritize filling up these seats from a national perspective. And it essentially made it so that national organizations kind of looked to local organizations as if they were just like a client versus like
the primary, the main decision making body and entity.
Like, if you want to find the president, you will find that person at the local level,
right? Versus
if you want to find the president, you're going to find them at the national level.
I see. Yeah, that's why there's like, there's the, if you look back at like the 60s, there's the Women's League of Topeka and the Women's League of, like Orlando or like these counties, or they'll be like organizations that have a similar name, but they're different, right? Because people were just, we're starting our thing, but it's kind of like that, but not kind of like that,
right? And I assume I'm not fully well versed in the Black Panthers' history and how they were structured organizationally, but I assume it was similar with the Black Panthers. It's like Chicago chapter, Oakland chapter, but at the end of the day, you're looking at them like Black Panthers. Yeah. But each of those chapters having significant power with their leaders and significant power on the local level.
Yeah.
So he was talking his shit about that. And then it really made me be like, wow, I can see. So like having worked at the AFL-CIO, big labor union organization.
A union of unions also.
A union of union. It's like one giant umbrella that is over a bunch of other little umbrellas or smaller umbrellas, if you will.
Yeah.
And basically it so having worked at the AFL-CIO, having worked at Forward.us, even though Forward didn't have
didn't have like affiliates structured.
They had affiliates in like, what's the word I'm looking for? Essentially organizations that they collaborated with, obviously, but it wasn't like a membership based.
Yeah, I think that's the distinction that Marshall was talking about is like there used to be like this organization has members in their area or in their work location. They all do their thing, are making decisions and having power over here, but then they also are connected to this national thing that's like the AFL model. Then there's the like what you're talking about with Ford, where it's like more of a national thing that's like in collaboration with a state-based entity, but they're not. Yeah, go ahead.
And as all of this is like that shift is essentially happening, he's basically saying that it's essentially also removing the whole point of like governance and like the power,
the practice of governance.
And the practice, literally the practice of governance. And I just thought that was so fascinating.
That is really interesting.
And I think this is irony, is that it was just like, wow, now I get why niggas was nerding out over Marshall Ganz.
And honestly, Robert's Rules of Order, if you want to talk about it, because like that's a way of practicing doing governance as a group.
Word.
It's like wonky and like too in depth, but it is a way of like, how are we making decisions? How are we practicing making decisions together?
Word. And
what's the process for that?
And
not me advocating for Robert's Rules of Order today.
Y'all heard it first. So my dog Marshall Ganz was spitting. So then he was like, when you separate participation from governance, you essentially have the Catholic Church. High participation but tightly held governance. So how I understand that, it's like, all right, at the national level, you're stripping the power and stripping the practice of governance from the local level, and now you're hoarding that power and hoarding that practice at the national level in like this almost like elite members only type of exclusive setup, and essentially again fucking up the opportunity for us to be practicing governance and fucking up what was able to happen, which was high level organizing happening at the local level and actually being able to resource and empower that and sustain that in a real way.
And I can imagine, like sustaining the organizing. A lot of what has happened to our movements in the last like 20 years, I'll say, is this like, big boom moments of the whirlwind, if you will, that is a term that the momentum organizing like community uses, like big mass protest moments. Lots is happening, lots is shifting, lots of organizations get stood up or lots of groups form, but then there isn't that sustained ability to practice governance together and to like be in power locally. There's a lot of like attention that's drawn nationally, and I think there's some attempts to like feedback locally, but it's not where that center of gravity often has been. And so it means I think it makes for like weak roots. So then we're very easily pulled up out of our roots, and then we got to like replant and all of that stuff.
Yes. How does that land on you as an organizer, as somebody who, has a history of organizing?
I mean, I think it's true. I think it's right. I think it's an accurate assessment of some of the things that have brought us to the conditions that we're in right now. Mm-hmm. And by those conditions, I don't necessarily mean like the fascist whole, but I mean like this feeling of like not feeling like our side has a strength to respond or like a powerful pushback. I think that like the system, our political system, our electoral system, I should say, is designed to like encourage this like centralization, meaning like there's only two parties. Mm-hmm. And so like those of us that are left of the center, right? So those are people that would be considered liberal or progressive or leftist, right? Mm-hmm. Like all the way, if this is the center, the right, then there's to the left. Like all of us have to like put our eggs in the Democratic Party basket. Mm-hmm. And that means that like it's a central focus that we have to like, then it means that there can't be as much power built in a disparate way. And I think that's by design so that we don't have power locally. And I think there's a lot, to be said about decisions that movement makes, particularly the need to like, or the focus on like getting dollars, particularly foundation dollars, in order to sustain the work and make it something that feels like it can be done on a larger scale. Yeah. That also, I think, contributes to a sapping of the local power. Yeah.
I think we're in alignment because I can't remember if he actually said this or alluded to it, but it's essentially like, so it is low key the reason why we are seeing this fascist the rise in fascism, white nationalism, Trump and his craziness in the White House. Because how he puts it, it's like, because we are being stripped of the practice of governance, we're also being stripped of the opportunity to be in community. And we're essentially living in various forms of isolation that does not allow us to essentially come together with our power to then, let's just say, have these organizations that could be, have these organizations at the local level that's then forcing certain decisions and things to happen at the national level. And I feel like, this whole democracy, this whole Republican Democratic shit would make sense if we were strong enough on the local level to step up to the national level and be like, we need all this shit to move in one direction or move in this direction versus this. It feels like various clouds of exclusive elitism and
we have to feed our power up to them in hopes that they,
and we're trying to finesse,
do a thing that we need them to do.
We're literally trying to finesse our way in these strategic Superman type ways, and it's like, fuck all that Superman shit. We need to squad up.
I think that this idea of us not practicing governance, and just to break that down on a more plain language.
What the fuck is governance?
I will say, to me,
I'm just using their words and shit.
Marshall's words. Anyways,
I don't even know this nigga.
Anyways, there is by governance, I would say, to me, it's the ability to come together to make decisions and about what happens in what's best for the collective, and then move those things forward, right?
Word.
That's, to me, is practicing governance, as it were.
So coming to a community coming together and being let's talk about our lives and experiences and see what adjustments need to be made, how we can, make sure auntie got her medication, make sure, cousin got child care. Make
sure that we're set up to be here for longer than the next 2 years. Let's make sure that we're planning for the future, accounting for the past, making sure we have what we need in the present, that type shit.
I fuck with governance.
Yeah, to me, right? But then and that's part of why when people say stuff democracy or democracy isn't just on election day, isn't just about voting. That is the difference between practicing governance and being in the democracy. It's we don't need to save the democracy. We need to figure out how to govern.
Yeah.
And I think that because the democracy is the decision part of it. The ability to okay, well, we're coming together, deciding what our votes are. But then there's a part of figuring out what are the needs and then making sure that those things get done. And I think that that part, to me, is also, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of our differences and being defined by our differences, and that actually this country is always the makeup of the so-called United States, since it was a United States, has always been many different races, many different ethnicities, many different genders, all it's always been different. And it's actually when people of differences come together to do a thing that the country has moved forward. That's the time that it has happened, at least in this country's history. And I think that this our separation is what is fueling our inability to like be together in our differences. Like it's okay that we don't have the same experience. We're not gonna have the same experience. That has to be okay. The thing is that it's not about saying your experience is less than mine or less important or less meaningful for mine. We got to consider it all in context, right? But we don't have the practice of doing that. That's why stuff like, Girl Scouts is important. Again, like
shit, even team sports,
flaws and all, things like Jack and Jill are important because people do need to come together and be like, you have this perspective, I have this perspective, but we have a thing that we need to do together. Common goal. How do we do that? Right? Yeah. Like that's the organizing of it all. And I think that on a really, really basic level, that's where we need to start to like get into practice of doing. Of course, ideally it can lead to building power. Yeah. But at the very least, we need to figure out how to be in relationship with each other in ways that don't require us to like be the same or like hide our differences, but do allow us to be who we are, but work towards a collective goal.
Yes. And I think it's so there's something about in reading this about this conversation and reading the conversation, like the script of the Marshall Ganz conversation. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the outlet that it was on? I just want to give the writer credit.
Come together right now.
Sing it.
What does he say afterwards?
Over me.
Okay, I didn't want to get it wrong.
Okay.
Sorry. Let me pull it up. What if it's like white national? Da, 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 da.
The New York Post type shit.
It says, okay. It is a conversation between Steve Dubb and Marshall Ganz. November 19th, 2024.
What's the outlet?
The outlet is nonprofitquarterly.org.
That's like a...
Do we fuck with them?
I mean, they're pretty officials. That's a official... it's not like a random entity. It's a...
Word.
A well-known, established magazine. Not that I'm not surprised by that, but yeah.
Well, the universe brought that to my attention.
We love that.
And I said,
shout out to
look
God.
At God bringing me something to read. So, yes, this Marshall Ganz conversation brought so much illumination to my thoughts and experiences in being in nonprofits. Because he also talks about, in regards to the shift that happened, he talks about how then there essentially becomes a boom in philanthropy.
Child.
And when he said that, I was like, oh, fuck. Because, like, I see the pipeline. When you step into the organization, nonprofit world, like, there's a pipeline. Like, if it's like going from being just an NBA basketball player to being like a 5-time All-Star and like
to an analyst,
like, and now you're like in the playoffs and then you win a championship and now you're an analyst. You got a podcast. You're on ESPN.
You are so right.
And there's literally a pipeline because
as someone who's on the pipeline,
totally. And honestly. Well, first of all, I really nerd out on this shit. Yeah. Like, when I enter a space, I'm like, I just try to figure it out. I'm like, how the fuck is this operating? Yeah. Because I want to figure out how I need to operate. Because I be wanting to hoop. So I was like, oh, shit, there's totally a pipeline. And I've even found myself like, well, shit, if I get a philanthropy job, why the fuck not?
Why the fuck not?
Flex on these niggas. Move some money to some real niggas. I'm a Robin Hood ass, not Robin Hood, Peter Pan. Or
It is Robin Hood.
Oh,
Oh
it
my
is Robin
gosh.
Hood. My bad. She said, "Oh my god."
I just know I
It's moments like this where you have to be reminded that I'm Haitian.
I remember you're Haitian.
I don't be fucking with all that shit.
Yeah,
What?
it's different. We all have different experiences.
We all have different experiences. No, I've been Americanized enough to know the difference between Peter Pan and Robin
No
Hood.
judgment. Okay, it's
They
all
just
good.
wear similar suits.
Let's move on.
We should move on. I'm a Robin Hood ass nigga.
I do.
I'm a Robin Hood ass
Robin
nigga.
Hood
Okay.
No, but Robin Hood is definitely one of my favorite, like, you know, character archetypes, and it totally makes, like, has been forever.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Robin Hood that Jamie Foxx is in, the like more recent one. You seen that one? Very good. And then I like the Robin Hood, the Disney Channel one with the fox.
Can't recall.
Oh,
but
so
I think
good. We'll have to watch it.
We should
Down
watch all
in
of them.
Nottingham. The little,
Okay. So to my point,
sorry.
he essentially says that there's this boom in philanthropy, and the boom in philanthropy essentially it helps fuel the lack of governance. It helps fuel the removal of power to the local level, because then he starts talking about how the organizations aren't like, oh shit, we got to do XYZ because John from
St. Louis.
local power in St. Louis is gonna fuck us up, put us in a headlock, if we don't do these goals that he's telling us to do.
Right.
Instead, it's like,
What are the funders saying?
what are the funders saying? What makes these people happy? So then
Let 'em
there's
know,
this,
Marsh.
Then there's this disconnect. I was reading this shit like, this nigga got bars. At some point in my notes, I put bars somewhere. Seriously, I was like, this nigga is spitting, and it's just like, oh, I see why people fuck with Marshall Ganz. But it did make me be like, I don't know, I guess see the discrepancy, see how we could come to a place of a rise in fascism, how we could come to a place where there are local organizations that aren't resourced in the same way that national organizations are. However, local organizations are doing a shit ton of work.
And that's also where people are going to feel the most impact right away.
Absolutely. Like, there are organizations I can name right now that I'm not going to put on the spot, but I'm like, damn, like, I wish they had some resources to actually cook up, because I see them doing way more work on the local level and struggling than on the national level. Some of these organizations are just got their feet up in these meetings, kind of just.
I think it's also the part about the roots is really what I keep coming back to. You know, because if the roots aren't strong, it's really easy to just pull something out, and I think that even if it, because there have been moments where local organizations did get a lot of resources.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's, but because our sort of the nonprofit components of our movement have made it so that there is this concentration on the incentive to be responsive to funders and not to the people that are on the ground, like in local. Like, I think that it generally,
structure.
It's a structural thing, even for organizations. And I am really interested in, because I know myself, and I've been in different conversations in philanthropy and otherwise since the election, of like, we need to focus local, and I'm really interested to see what that looks like moving forward. And I'm
empowering local
local organizations, and also focusing on focusing strategies on winning big locally. One, because I think that that's important to show that winning is possible. And to practice some different models of winning, because we haven't really been. There aren't a ton of successful examples. I think we need to be experimenting a little bit.
For sure. And to be clear, this also, I think, well, first of all, let me not try to jump in front of the bus for Marshall Ganz, because Marshall Ganz said what he said. This is just my interpretation of what he said.
And everything is up for critique and consideration.
Absolutely. This is the N-word motherfucking, this is the N-word podcast. Yeah. Absolutely. Everything is up for critique and everything is up for conversation. I just wanted to say that, there are folks who are doing it right in this space. It's just when you look across the field, there are less organizations that are structurally doing it right. Or let's just say that when I look across the field, I see organizations that seem to have been impacted by exactly what Marshall Ganz is saying. Yes,
and I think that the incentive structures are in line with what he is saying, and I think that that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah,
I'm really curious to see how actually we do need to focus on building local power.
Yeah,
and also the impact of how this idea of focusing locally translates to the digital space.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about micro influencers.
Yeah.
And and not and by micro I mean people that have a niche. People that have a audience that's very active with them, very engaged with them. And also that is in a way that's networked. So it's not just them as an individual, but they're connected to other people. I think we see some of that happening. But I'm also so I'm just curious how that translates. What does it look like to translate the idea of focusing locally to a world that is increasingly organizing on digital platforms?
I think... So, I don't know, what you said makes me think about slapping the label ethical around in front of ethical influencer. And because to me it's really, how do you shift the culture of people wanting to gravitate towards the shiny object that white supremacy and capitalism is flashing in our eyes, versus realizing that actually, maybe I don't need to be a philanthropist. Maybe I can focus in my neighborhood and build locally and do something that's simple and specific versus again, maybe it's good enough for me to just have been an NBA player for 2, 3, 4 years.
Totally.
Versus I got to make the playoffs and be a champion and, again, follow the pipeline. So I feel thinking about what does it look like to create or just develop a culture, a practice of ethical influencers that can do this work, sustain this work in a way, and grow in a way that
isn't always about more money, more followers, more sponsorships, more
because it's only a matter
power, because that is the type of thing that can corrupt. But it's more how do I just keep having influence in this place and moving this idea or moving this community or moving these people towards a particular thing. Yeah, I think that yep. I'm also thinking about the blackout or the economic blackout boycott thing that's happening today.
Is that what they're calling it?
I think, so here's a couple of things. One,
sorry.
So we're recording this on February 28th. It's the day that many people have called to an economic boycott. Don't buy shit. Don't credit card transactions, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. not whoop-de-whoop, like, sorry, I want to be specific here. Like,
I mean, I could be specific.
Yeah.
I woke up wanting some damn breakfast delivered to the door and couldn't because I'm participating in the
in the boycott. Nice. We appreciate your sacrifice for the people. Okay?
Sacrificing.
But I think I wanted to talk about it here on this episode because I feel like it's a thing that's like, it's layered.
Yeah.
You know, one, boycotts, like when you're talking about organizing something, like it's important to know who the source of or who's saying we should do this, especially in this world where like shit just be coming across your timeline from God knows who, promoted by who knows what, and meaning maybe it's a bot, right? We don't even know these days. Maybe it's AI, maybe Meta said, but I'm not saying this boycott is that. So it's important. I think people are like, well, where did this come from? And I started to see it percolate maybe like a couple weeks ago. And
I feel like
before that.
Yeah.
Because people have been, there was the after companies like Target and so on and Walmart and across the board started to like roll back their DEI efforts or say they were rolling them back. Which I just want to say quickly, like, they don't have to do this. They're choosing to do it.
Dumb.
It is not like Trump said you can't operate in the U.S. if you have DEI. They're choosing to do it, and I just think that that's really important for everybody to remember. These are choices that these people are making. Imagine
daycares across America being like, "We're closing. We're just closing." I just feel like
it doesn't make any sense.
It's like, why are you fucking like why do you feel like you have to remove this program that is actually moving your work forward in a positive way? Like, it feels like
they want to. I really feel like I'm looking around like, oh, everybody's hoods came out real fast. Like, y'all had those in your back pockets just ready to just woof right on.
Papa's cabinet, child. Pull out the hoods.
All right. The hoods are back. We got.
It doesn't. It's not really racism, Angela. It's history. It's heritage.
Anyways,
it's not racism. It's heritage.
I think it's just as people are like, oh, like watching these companies do this. Y'all are choosing to say, actually, we don't think that we don't want to be inclusive, which is just bananas. But this boycott, it started off, we saw people like Al Sharpton going into Costco and doing a buy-in. Like, this has been a thing that's been picking up momentum, but it's interesting to see like where at least the media right now is sourcing it. They say that it's NPR today said that this organization called the People's Union, this man named John Schwartz is a white dude, a white presenting dude. I don't want to know whatever his ethnicity is these days, but a white presenting dude.
Not these days. Fuck you mean these days?
I'm just saying.
Is he white or black?
Who knows? He's definitely not black. But maybe he's I'm not. This is not that's not the point of what I'm trying to say.
These days.
The point is, NPR says it came from, what's his name? The People's Union and John Schwartz. Other folks are saying this was started by Al Sharpton and some other folks. I think that, yes, it is important to know who the source is. And I think that we're in a place right now where diversity of tactics is necessary. Experimentation is necessary. And I think like practice is necessary. Yeah. So I've seen a lot of people be like, a one-day boycott isn't going to do anything.
This isn't strategic.
Which companies? Why are we doing it with all these companies? It's too mass. And
why isn't it just Target?
And I get it. And I think that I'm not saying that we shouldn't be raising those flags, but I also think that we should be raising those flags and also supporting collective action, because the truth is we are very much out of practice for collective action in this type of way.
Yeah.
over the, many of us have done these mass protests, showing up to a rally, showing up to a march, showing up to the police precinct, showing up to, even calling members of Congress. But when it comes to like an economic boycott or like a thing that requires us like a long sustained or like a sacrifice, we're very much out of practice. And I think that it's worthwhile, especially why I'm participating in the boycott, is to be in support of this idea of let's get into practice of getting into formation. Yep. Maybe today isn't the day that makes the oligarchs be like, oh no, they're really serious.
Right.
But maybe us practicing it today prepares us for 3 months from now. Many folks are calling, I think the CWA, the Communications Workers Association Union, is called for is it another union? I'm sorry. Got to get the source on that.
We'll figure it out.
Or UAW may be the source. Not CWA. UAW is the right one.
We'll figure it out.
They are calling for a general strike in 2028. That means in addition to like a boycott, it's like a work stoppage.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that like
getting in the practice so that
we can be ready when it's time to do these things.
To do the actual Super Bowl organization formation of it all.
Exactly.
I definitely agree. I think that it's because I'm split the same way. We should actually just be focused on Target or focused on, this one company, whatever the case is, Amazon. Or just like, how can we make this more strategic and pungent? Because I can already tell that half of my friends are kind of into it. Half of the friends are just like, yeah, whatever. So I definitely agree, because this is a moment, it's kind of like a mile marker, a moment we can come back to and be like, remember that one time when this is this is a better version of us doing that.
Right.
It also is making me think about how in like the fitness culture, like sometimes people think you have to go hard every day, when it's like, all right, you could go hard on Monday and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, kind of take it easy. Like have a day where you're walking, jogging lightly. You don't have to go hard so every day. So it's like getting people to essentially start to walk.
Just move your body.
Move your body.
Yes, just get in the habit of we doing this. And Adrienne Marie Brown posted on her feed when she was talking about it, like maybe today is the only day. Maybe this is just your first day.
Right.
Right. And like, because also it can be about not just getting in the practice of like collective action, but also changing your spending habits, changing your relationship with consumption, right? I think there's also a big part of this that's like, actually, I don't need to go to Target every week to just buy random whatnots.
Right.
And I don't, I can like reuse these clothes, or like I don't need to have this Amazon Prime membership because I'm not ordering stuff, or like you know what I mean? I think that there are, it's important for folks to like be like, what can we do? What can we try? While we're also exploring the like ways to make this better, the ways to like sharpen it, the ways that we need to be a little bit more polished or what have you with our demands, or targeted with our demands. But I think it's really important to be in practice right now, and to like, especially for people who are, if you're an organizer or you're someone that's like doing social change work, to not be the voice that's like, poo-poo, that's not gonna work. Right. Like, enough. Like,
be clear about when you're gonna give those critiques versus being the dad at the practice of the basketball game with his kid. Like, y'all niggas need to run the triangle offense.
Yeah. So like okay,
sir, these kids are 8. Just chill.
We're just trying to practice layups, my friend.
We're actually just trying to keep your kid busy.
Right.
I definitely want to ask you 2 things. I actually want to say something back to my boy Marshall Ganz, and then ask you two things. I really appreciated reading about this Marshall Ganz conversation, because one of the things that they talked about is how essentially organizing is really just like how to leverage your resources in ways that can disempower those who are oppressing you. So it's like, all right, bring Angela in the room, bring person A, person B, person C, whoop-de-whoop in the room, and we don't have to dream or create these goals that are so large and magical and this big old show. We can literally look at what's in our daily practice, what's in our experience, and like see how we can leverage power within that framework, and do that as a collective. And it's really dope how he put it, because he was like, essentially with the Montgomery bus boycott, it was this realization of like, oh, well, we don't have to support these people that are oppressing us. We can empower our feet. And instead of walking to the bus stops to get on these buses, we can walk to work, and really concentrate and focus on that and do that and, you know, impact our oppressor. And I just thought that was such a dope way to think about individual resources into collective power. And just like a dope nerding out of, you know, the civil rights era and like organizing.
I really like that, and also makes me think back to the economic boycott that we're talking about, right? Like, what do we have? We have, like, I think very much, unfortunately, like our electoral power has been really sapped because of gerrymandering and the two-party system, all of that. Like, we're losing our ability, and money in politics. We're losing our ability to. We're losing the impact of our electoral punch as voters. However, our power as consumers is still very potent, especially Black consumers. Like, we do spend a lot of money, and even though we're a small portion of the population, we tend to like be a lot of the like sending money. Oh, we spend a lot because we don't have a lot, but there's more that we are able to have an influence. That's one of the areas, like you said, or like Marshall said, using what you have to take away power from your oppressor.
Yeah. I woke up wanting breakfast served on a silver motherfucking platter. I mean, at least the styrofoam platter.
Right. Not a silver platter, but a styrofoam container.
Styrofoam container. But I was like, oh, right, we're doing this.
Oh, yeah, not
I can't
spending
even
money.
fully identify the we, but
and
let me be in practice with my niggas, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's lots of like, I don't know, it's not perfect at all, but it's something, and right now doing this something feels really, really important, and I think it'll be interesting to see what we can do next.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how different communities take this idea. Like, I've seen a lot of Black churches talking about this, which I am loving and kind of entertained by. I heard today that folks were talking about like boycotting Target through Lent, which is fascinating, and you know, do your thing, Black church. But yeah, stuff like that I think is like, let's say yes more and not like, oh, that's not right.
Shaming and critiquing. Yeah, I'm definitely. There's a population of people that are very excited about this boycott and very hyped to participate in it. And I'm in the audience and in the background like, all right, yeah.
Let's do it.
I'll throw a stone or two.
Yeah, well, sure.
You know what I'm saying? Okay, a question I wanted to ask you, actually meant to ask you at the top of this conversation, but my boy Marshall Ganz lit.
He had to spit it.
You know, it happened. When was the first time you realized that you were being organized?
Ooh.
I can definitely speak to that from my own experience. Very quickly, first time I recognized I was being organized. So I feel like I could answer the first time I recognized I was being organized, and then the first time I recognized the power of organizing. Because I think those are two definitely separate but important questions to answer. The first time I recognized when I was being organized, it was via the Dream Defenders, and I believe, I want to say Nalini led this.
Shout out Nalini
Shout
Stamp.
out Nalini Stamp for sure. I want to say Nalini led this, but let's just say Dream Defender leadership organized the fuck out of me this one time. Basically, they were like, let's go down to Boca. Basically, let's hop on this bus from Tallahassee to Boca to protest. I think it was like Barack Obama was pulling up for something, and to like protest something around like private prisons, I believe.
There is a private prison in Boca.
I believe that was the situation. Maybe he was like meeting with the Geo Group Corporation folks at the time or something like that.
Yep.
And I'm just like, you know what? This is cool, and I know some of these niggas, and this feels like some Black Panther shit. So like, all right, bet, let's slide.
This feels like some Black Panther shit AF.
So let's slide. This feels cool. I should be going to class right now, but you know, I'm sure they'll understand. So I slide, and basically we're out there like it went from Tallahassee to Gainesville to Orlando to like pick up other Dream Defender members and folks that were just down to throw down. We slid to Boca, and basically, you know, we were out there protesting, and it was just like, woo, like with our signs and shit. And then Nalini, Phil, and like other Dream Defender leaders, I believe Janelle was also among this group. Mike Sampson, I don't know if Mike Sampson was a part of this group. Anyways, basically a bunch of Dream Defenders essentially come out in like Dream Defender hoodies, all in black. Like everybody else is wearing white and shit like that. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
It's some Black Panther shit.
It's some Black Panther shit. I'm like, hold on, man. I don't know if I signed up for this shit.
Yeah.
But
Some snick shit, actually, but yeah.
Low-key. And basically, they got in the middle of the road, locked arms, and blocked traffic. And I was like, oh, shit. We just got organized, my nigga. And I'm just like, wow, this is really happening, and this is cool as fuck. So it was basically this direct action. It was like a protest that was also led into a direct action. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, you have these protesters.
Direct action and civil disobedience.
Direct action and civil disobedience.
Yes.
So essentially, how would you define civil disobedience?
Basically like breaking a law and like protest for a cause. So like shutting down a freeway is civil disobedience. Locking down in front of a building is civil disobedience.
And essentially I would add essentially breaking a law to utilize the attention that galvanizes to draw attention to the cause that you're...
And to ideally disrupt...
True.
The like... Stop someone from getting deported. Mm-hmm. Stop a shareholder meeting from happening. Stop people from taking arms to another country to do something harmful.
Word. So yeah, that was the first time I realized that I was getting organized, and I was like, wow, that's pretty lit. The first time I recognized the power of organizing was during the Dream Defender occupation of the Florida State Capitol. And I feel like that entire 31-day experience was just filled with moments of like recognizing the power of organizing and like really being like, oh shit, like we just moved this chess piece over here in like a real ass way, and like that's dope as fuck. So the moment I was talking about is basically we were locked into the Capitol, and there was essentially all these different rules that of like what we could do and couldn't do. And I feel like at one point they were like allowing food to come in, but like locking the Capitol doors so that people aren't coming in and out, but they were allowing food to come in. And at one point they just decided that like, nah, they're not doing that shit no more. And niggas was like, what the fuck? So basically we started to digitally organize and basically tell the story of folks in the Capitol doing this, and like Capitol Police essentially doing this. And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, a shit ton of pizza boxes started coming in, and it was just like, oh wow, we just like made some noise and went from like, you know, hungry activists in the Capitol to like food coming in because they actually didn't want all that smoke because of the decisions that they made to like stop allowing food and like resources and stuff to come in.
Before we keep going, before I respond on my example, I want to shout out you and let our audience know that there's a new edition of the Eyes on the Prize series that is streaming on HBO Max now. And I think there's an episode, I think it's episode 6. We haven't watched it yet, but it features Dream Defenders and the work that sort of the modern day Black liberation movement, and footage that Kevin captured at the Capitol and throughout his time at Dream Defenders is featured in that episode. Many of our homies and icons are in there. Shout out to Patrice Cullors, who was a big part of making sure that those stories got included in this Eyes on the Prize. So definitely check it out. And I'm really proud of you and your work being included in it. I'm really also proud of that this story is being told. I think it's so important. Like, we're in it right now, and many of us have been living it, so it feels just like, oh yeah, that was like right before so and so moved here, and this person had a baby, and then we did this, and then I went over that. But like, this is actually very much history that is important to document in our country. Like and we'll talk about this, but we're like basically 5 years out from the uprisings of the summer of 2020 and after George Floyd's murder, were like the largest mass protests in U.S. history. Right. That didn't not happen. Right. We're living in a fascist hole now, partially because of us saying that we actually do believe that Black Lives Matter, and millions of people agreeing with us. And that it's not okay to kill Black people, and it's not indiscriminately, and it's not okay to treat us differently, and that the racial reckoning that has been long overdue is going to happen. Like, we're here now because of people stood up and said no, and we will be back on, we will move forward. But I just want to name and like celebrate the organizing power of young people, of Black people, of people who believe in freedom, and that this is stuff that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, our children will know. We have to tell these stories. We have to document our history, and I'm really grateful that it happened. So shout out to the folks that are doing that and are doing that did it then, did it in 2020, did it in 2015, and are doing it now. Tell those stories. Okay. This is not my first. I don't think this is my first. This is this memory is a meaningful memory of being organized, partially because I was also trying to organize. This is the moment I'm remembering is in the spring of 2008, and I was a senior at Western Michigan University. I was involved in the Michigan Student Association. And I went to a meeting of we were trying to basically restart the Michigan Student Association. And I was being organized by Carmen Berkeley,
Nice.
the one and only, and Bill Schiebler. Bill Schiebler is actually who I credit to, one of the people that I credit for teaching me how to be an organizer.
Shout out, Bill.
Like, I saw Bill and I was like, whoa, this person seems like a Jedi. Like, what are they, like, how is this person even moving? And I remember I was trying to organize them because I wanted to work. Bill and Carmen came to Michigan to the Michigan Student Association meeting to try to help us establish and shape up this student association. And that had been a thing and then went away and was trying to come back. And we were, but I wanted to work for the United States Student Association because I had met Rebecca Thompson a few months before that, and she was awesome. And I was like, I want to do what you're doing. And so I was like, hey, what do you all think of me? And they were like, well, what should we think of you? Like, this kind of thing. Like, and I remember being like really but also being really familiar and like feeling very comfortable sharing about myself and sharing about my life and wanting to know about them and wanting to know about their life and just being like, oh, this feels like I could learn so much from these people, and also that they see me as like very valuable and like they care what I have to say, but they're also very cool and like caring and people that I want to spend time with and I want to learn from. So shout out to Bill and Carmen. I love you all. And I think that I will say one more thing, because we were talking about at the top of the show, like, you know, me being an organizer. And I will say that that is something that I worked hard for. I feel like I remember a moment being like, I'm not an organizer, but I really want to be an organizer. And so I studied people like Bill. I tried to like learn what it meant to do a training. I went to organizing trainings. I, read about organizing, and it was a thing that I like. Organizing is not the main thing that I do with my like time now.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that once it's in you, it is just in you, and that's how you move through the world. And so that's also one of the things I'm most proud of about myself, is that I saw that I wanted to be an organizer, and then I did the work to get there.
I fuck with that heavy because I think that's something that I share in my story as well, is that once I started getting an understanding of all of the different moving parts that were in front of me, you know, at the time on some like grassroots organizing, racial justice, student organizing, being in the occupation at the Capitol, like once I started recognizing what was going on, the different roles, how the roles were being played, realizing the skill set that I had as a creative, as a videographer, photographer, as somebody who was like hella interested in like design, hella interested in making things look good. Like, one of the reasons why I literally stepped into organizing was like, this shit looks like some Black Panther shit. It looks cool as fuck. It looks cool,
yeah.
So like,
the aesthetic was there.
I want to fuck with this because like it's for a good cause and it looks cool. Just having this moment where I'm like, oh, okay, I think I'm starting to recognize what's going on here, and I think I recognize that like I can have the most impact as a digital strategist. And literally being like, I'm going to be a digital strategist. Not only am I going to be a digital strategist, a digital organizer, I'm going to be good as fuck at that shit. So I too had this moment of like, oh, I want to do this and this is lit. And then also had people that I was like literally studying, like studying Jess Morales, who, brought me into the AFL-CIO, paved the way for me to not only be there, but like be myself. Watching her navigate the space, watching, you know, Rachel navigate the space, watching how, you know, all these people gave me opportunities, meeting Carmen, seeing how Carmen was navigating the AFL-CIO, just really wanting to like study and like do this work really well.
Yeah.
It makes me really interested in like, you know, how to help inspire other people to be able to identify these various roles that fall under like organizing, community organizing, and how their skill sets can actually be applied to dope, impactful organizing work.
Yeah. And I think also the best training is on the job training. And I don't mean like job, but like doing the work, like you
just doing it.
Yeah, just doing it.
Yeah.
And like asking questions and like being okay making mistakes and being okay with somebody being like, hey, I see what you were trying to do here. There's a better way to do that, or this is another way to do that. And I think that that's also a part of, that's a big, like, organizing is humbling AF.
For sure.
Because it's about moving people towards a collective action, and sometimes people aren't trying to move.
Sometimes
a lot of times people aren't trying to move. A lot of times people don't want to hear what you're saying, or a lot of times you got to like say things that are hard for people to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that like, yeah, it can be very humbling. If you're not humbled, if somebody isn't like, yo, that ain't it, you're probably not doing it right. And I think that yeah.
You know, it it brings me to the full circle moment of talking my shit about people who claim the Obama campaign. Because honestly, it's like, yeah, you know, sometimes this organizing shit doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it's like, fuck, that sucks. So when you help elect, you know, not only somebody who at the time was perceived as like a really good candidate, when you help elect this person and also help elect the first black candidate president, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna talk my shit about. I did that shit, nigga.
I definitely did. Yeah, I was there.
I signed off on those emails, nigga.
Yeah.
What is you talking about? I was there knocking on the door. Like, I would talk my shit too, and I would flaunt mine.
And also, a lot of people learned like a lot of different things, a lot of new things during that time, during that campaign. It was pretty epic. It was huge.
Definitely another shift in the organizing matrix in
For
regards
sure.
of the impact of technology and how it helped.
It helps fuel social change and also sap in some ways local power.
Word. Angela, this has been a great conversation.
Always.
Shout out Marshall Ganz. Shout out the Dream Defenders. Shout out United States Student
Association. Shout out Tiffany Dina Lofton, who's helping to reignite the USSA flame.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, we love Tiffany D. And I just want to say, like, yeah, just love to all of the people that are organizing and don't know it.
For sure.
Come to the front, please.
Yeah.
We need you, and you don't need, like, the training definitely helps. I'm not saying don't get trained. The training helps. Having a mentor, having a coach, having people you can trust helps, but also like you're bringing your people together. That's great. Keep doing that.
Hell yeah.
And you're not alone in doing that. On the micro, the macro, the micro, whatever, all of those levels.
That's new.
Yeah, new word.
I didn't know.
I think I made it up. I don't think it's really a word.
Oh, I thought it was one of those like new Elon Musk things.
I would never, ever.
I'm talking shit. Definitely shout out to these organizations. And I think everyone should find an organization to be a part of. And I even say this to myself in my busy life. I know there's a lot of organizations that I help support and work for in different capacities, but I think on just like a volunteer level, let me just be a body in this space and soak up what's going on and engage where I can. I think I really want to make more time to do that.
Yeah.
And I encourage our folks who are listening and watching to do the same. This has been a great episode of the N-Word Podcast, a podcast empowered by The South LLC, where unapologetic Black culture defines political power.
Love y'all.
Peace. It's about culture.